So we're going to take a look at the half angle formulas, and we have these formulas given to us, sine u of 2, cosine u of 2, and then there are two formulas for tangent. You can use either one. It's really just whatever your preference is. So it's important to understand what u stands for. So for example, if we wanted to find sine of 15 degrees, we know that 15 degrees is not a special angle, but instead we could rewrite 15 degrees as 30 divided by 2. And the reason that we want to do that is because 30 is a special angle, so we have exact values for it. So we're going to take a look at this first example. We're trying to find sine of 255 degrees, and we want the exact value. 255 is not a special angle, and we could use the sum or difference formulas to find this as well. So this is not the only way to do it, but we're going to practice using the half angle formula here. So this one's a little tricky because we have to figure out what 255 is half of. Then you can quickly realize that that's going to be something outside of the unit circle. So I want to go over this one step by step. And just for reference, this is number 4 on your homework, the last homework that you all received. So let's get started. Since we're using sine, we're going to have to use the sine formula. So let's go ahead and start. So the first thing I need to figure out is 255 is half of what? Well, it's really simple. All we need to do is 255 times 2. We get 510. Not sure if you can see that very well. But we have 510. Now, essentially, we didn't really change the problem. 510 divided by 2 is 255. So we've just changed the way that we're expressing that value, but we're not actually changing the value. The next part that we have to understand is whether we need a plus or a minus. So for that, we have to ask ourselves, what quadrant is the original angle in? Not 510. That's just a resource to rewrite 225. Remember that the goal is to find the value of 255. 255 degrees is in quadrant 3, and if we think about whether or not sine is positive or negative in quadrant 3, we can see that it's negative. So we're going to use the negative value, not the positive. Okay, so it always has to be one or the other, never both. All right. Next, we're going to do 1 minus cosine. Now, this is asking for cosine of angle u. If you look at the formula, u is that doubled angle. So this is going to be cosine of 510 degrees all over 2. All right, so we can start plugging in. We can find cosine of 510 degrees. You might think, well, that's not on the unit circle, but we have to realize that we still have ways of finding that value. So if we go to the calculator, 510 degrees, well, you can't see that, but 510 degrees is more than 1 revolution. If I take 360 degrees away from this, I'll be left with 150. So essentially, cosine of 510 and cosine of 150 are the same value. So I can do 1 minus, and I'm going to look up the value of cosine of 150, which is negative radical 3 over 2. And all of that over 2. So now that we've substituted a value for 510, we have everything plugged in. We just need to start simplifying. So don't forget to keep carrying that negative. If I want to subtract this, I need common denominators. So I'm going to do 2 things. One is I'm going to write the 1 as 2 over 2 so that I have a common denominator. And then I'm going to simplify this double negative. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2 over 2. And then a negative negative is plus, and then I have a radical 3 over 2. And don't forget that all of that is still over 2. Okay, now the reason that I did 2 over 2 is because now I could combine my numerator. So let's continue down here. 2 over 2 plus radical 3 over 2 is 2 plus radical 3 over 2. And that denominator right here, remember that's over 1. I'm going to outsmart this a little bit. I know that if my denominators in a complex fraction are the same, I can cancel them out. So if this were a 2, I could do something like, well, how could I, at first, let's think about this. How could I make this a 2? So I'd have to multiply everything by 2. So instead of having all of this, I would have 2 over 4. So let's get rid of that 2 over 1 and rewrite it, as 4 over 2. Sorry about that. Now I have 2's in the denominators. Let me just rewrite that a little bit better. Okay, so 2 over 1 became 4 over 2. These all cancel out. So I actually have a 4, well, I'm going to write this as 4 over 2. So those cancel, and I'm left with 2 plus radical 3 all over 4. And we have to go one more step because remember that in a big radical, you can separate them into 2 smaller ones. Sorry, I messed up there. Oh, excuse me. Keep carrying that negative. I'm going to rewrite the numerator as its own radical and the denominator as its own radical. And the reason that I want to do that is because now I can simplify that. So I have negative radical 2 plus radical 3 all over 2. And that is the final answer. Sine of 255 degrees is equal to this value.